What I think is funny is the more connected we are, like, you know, the ether.
Well, but we're able to do more,
Yes.
connect to more people around the world.
But it does
become
prevent
problematic.
interacting with each other.
Oh, yeah. Um, 104. Oh, man.
It's on my way. Wow. I promise not to look at it and show it to my wife. No, it's just for you.
So it's back for the moment. We'll see how it goes. It's been on and off all along. Basically, what happens is when one of these guys starts broadcasting like crazy, that's me, so that doesn't count. But one of these others starts sucking up bandwidth, all of a sudden the rest of it chokes out. So we've got one or two people just trying to suck up everything.
I just think we've got somebody who's not. We haven't seen anybody else on the site who's doing.
It might be one of the people.
That's what I'm saying.
So, they're not really supposed to be.
But at least you've done what you can, which we really appreciate.
Hello, and Society, this September 13th, 2014. It's 1:02 p.m. Pacific time. We're definitely having broadband issues, and here at the Rocket Bakery on Hay, we're doing the best we can. Luckily, they just went ahead and reset their wall. Wi-Fi, but it's still kind of choking it out because it looks like there's some heavy use at the Tolkien 10 event to get notes out and review the previous video. We had some technical issues then too, so it's been a little bit of a challenge. Hopefully others of you will be joining us soon. So we are broadcasting. I'm still fiddling with waiting for to, and we will start discussing.
No thanks, I'd rather not.
And I'm half Irish, so you know. There you go. Network is having difficulties. Yes, we know. So, so I don't even remember.
Looks like Chris did.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you. Somebody else saves the day. So I can get these things going, but getting so many going. So we're going to see how this does as far as background noise. So when you want to speak, pick this up and speak into it. You have to really hold it up close.
Okay.
Like right about chin level, pointing right
Is that
at
the Radio Shack one? I've got one from Radio Shack that I
Yeah.
This just doesn't have a.
This one's showing.
Yeah, the network is choking. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. What's that?
Heavy user back?
Have what?
Is the heavy user back?
Yes, and another one. I want to activate. Let me try a trace route. I can tell you.
Comcast has this program where they're letting smartphones log on, and it chokes.
Well, but Comcast is just notoriously crappy anyway. Let's see, trace route. Oh, man, it's so choked out, you can't even tell. Can't even get DNS resolution.
400.
Yeah, they're using Comcast. Oh, it's been like 12,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, Comcast is just
I've
awful
been
shared
having issues
network.
with streaming videos late at night. The cell phone logs on, my bandwidth goes away. It's annoying.
Yeah. Well, fix my house. All we have. Yeah, they already overhauled all the wiring outside my house, and it's still. And even my TV buzzes out, but it's always been on. It's my fifth time.
It's your Zen garden. You get Zen garden.
Yeah. It's too much Zen. Anyway, come on, let me join that. Hang on. So, and once again, technical difficulties, but we're trying to get online here.
I had 0 problems after
What's that?
I have had 0 problems after I
Okay.
sent them some data.
Yes, I would love that information because this is. I've dropped them 4 other times because they've been so crap. DSL, even though it didn't have the same broad width, was always solid. My DSL was always solid. I may only get 3.5 to 6.5 megs, but at least it's always working. I got up to 6.5 on that second one. The first one,
It depends on.
you guys were throttled, remember?
Station.
I didn't let you guys take it all so that it would keep working, not overload.
Okay, I think we're on letter 89.
So,
He has 89. I do have 89 here.
sorry.
Is 89 first one?
I think we were
This is
past.
great because this is the first time
I
I've
thought we were
actually
past 89, but
using the word new catastrophe in one of these letters. So.
We have to do this one at a time or so.
Sir, what was that?
We'll have to do this one paragraph at a time.
Yeah.
No.
yeah. So I think we did do a reading.
Newsflash.
So,
We postponed, unless you did it Tolkien.
we did a reading at Tolkien Moot.
Okay.
Of the whole letter, because I.
We passed it around.
Oh,
Did you?
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Katie did a reading. Somebody else did a reading. No, I don't think. I don't remember. Right. Well, we can do that. Whoever's going to read, hold that mic up nice and close.
Do we have notes that you want?
I have not had a chance to get any notes,
Do you want to
unfortunately.
just do? No.
Today and then,
Yeah, I think that'd be a good way to start out.
is this even coming up or is it still down?
It's choppy.
It's up.
choppy, but it's up.
Okay.
Did you?
So I think we covered shoulders last time. Tolkien Moot. You were at Tolkien Moot, which was Roma. And then, so how about,
Wow, it's really like.
I think we did heart. We also covered heart, which is hon or ore. So let's do the parts of the hand. So it'll be multiple parts.
Do you want to do an official start? I don't know if you said anything.
I did. Yeah, I did it quick. So, and today we have Drake, Richard at the Rocket Bakery, and then whomever's. So we'll cover the parts of the hand here. This is from Vineyard Terroir, from the very first page, the parts of the body. This is September 1988. So hand is, looks like it's a straight line. So May, M-A, it's got a straight line over the A, so indicating long, so May, but it's just spelled M-A. The hollow of the hand, it's interesting he did a different name for the hollow of the hand as Kambe, K-A-M-B-E.
I've seen that somewhere before.
Looks like YouTube just dropped.
It's just the. It's still.
Or is that Google?
Carry on.
And the finger is lepse, Lepse.
Which one is that?
Finger, just finger in general. Lepse. What's that?
There's a separate one for thumb.
I'm not seeing that, no. Quare, or quare, I guess it'd be quare. Q-U-A with the accent over the A, R-E with the double dots over the E. So quare for fist. Q-U-A-R-E. And then differentiates right hand and left hand. So the left hand is Hyar Maite, so Hyar Maite. That's the left hand. Hyar Maite.
H-A-Y?
Hyar, Hyar Maite. Maite. So, do the dying Maite.
That makes sense because isn't PR one of the 4 cardinal
branches? Well, and also Numenor, the different stars, the left hand branches.
That's it.
And then the right hand is Formaite, F-O-R-M-A-I-T-E, Formaite.
So, can you recall how on the cardinal directions are also Yarman.
I'm not off the top of my head.
But I think because Tolkien uses right
yes.
or north is it west because of Valinor? Is that what it is?
Well, it was that way on the. I remember it was that way on the Hobbit map.
Well, south is Yarman Darsal, something like that. I thought. And Yar is left, which would make sense. If
you gotta hold up that microphone so people can hear you. They won't hear you at all.
So just commenting on what Hawk was saying with the vocabulary for left and right, the arm maite and for maite. So Tolkien uses for north, south, east, and west. Uses left and right actually. I think it's Valinor is to the west, and that is their top of their compass. So they orient it not with north at the top, but with west at the top. And west, to your left hand would be south, which is Yar Maite is your left hand. And I believe there should be a reference in the Tolkien Atlas of Middle that shows the southern lands are, I think it's Hjarm Darsal, I'm not sure on that word exactly, but and then to the right would be to the north, and then behind you, so to speak, is to the east. That'd be the bottom of the compass rose. But that's just what I remember from the top of my head. Anyway,
cool.
Carry on.
Well, no, that's great. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good to know.
I always kind of wondered why the north was at the. I remember on the Misty Mountain map rotating.
Yeah, why is it like Lonely Mountain? I think is that what you meant, or Misty Mountains?
No, the map of the mountain, the Lonely Mountain.
Lonely Mountain, yeah, it's different, isn't it? It's turned.
You don't really notice it until you look at the compass.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause I did a hexagon grid map of Lonely Mountain for a camp I ran, and I ran at that too. It's like, oh, if I want north at the top, I have to turn everything 90 degrees. Which then leads to the question. This leads to the obvious question, which is, why is north at the top? Or
well, I think it makes sense.
Oh, but
And their orientation is to Valinor. That's the top of the world.
It depends on where you are. We have a very Euro and US centric
True,
attitude.
but, yeah, I mean, I think in Australia, still puts north at the top of their maps.
Actually, read from the classical, from the in the early Christian age, had everything rotated to the east at the top.
That'd be an interesting thing to follow up on. So I'm just gonna make a note of that.
Is it even transmitting video? Because I'm not
The
seeing
camera,
this video.
the camera is not on.
I think we're getting audio.
Well, it was.
Oh, that could be. I mean, as long as we've got something.
Let me turn my camera off and you guys turn yours on because nobody wants to stare at my ugly mug. All right, go ahead and turn it on there.
It is recording video, so post this on YouTube later, right?
It automatically uploads it to YouTube. So
I have no idea.
it should show up.
Could you just find out what your I don't know.
It's not. Leave the hangout.
Yeah, it's
I know now.
What are the other streams? To know.
Now,
We'll have to.
it's just
like
what happened? It used to.
Forever niggling.
Reading the notes from June, or did you guys cover that before? So we just forego that.
We did read the notes from June.
Okay, so we don't need to do that.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, Jeremiah. Well, that's why I'm wondering if, I mean, I like this location a lot, but
It's going to be the same problem anywhere we go. I need to get my phone working again to provide broadband away.
unless we can actually be in a location where we can hard wire it, maybe
Well,
use an Ethernet
if
cable.
you got a public broadcast, somebody's gonna log on to
That's what I'm saying.
free bandwidth,
Yeah.
because most users in the cafe aren't using the bandwidth, so they don't
So
notice
does that mean
this password. It's not password.
This one?
They're public.
I thought it was.
Because they're public, even if
I
they.
thought it was just saved from the first time I logged on. I had the
Yeah,
password.
yeah.
So
I don't think they know. But even if they did. all they
Usually
do
you
is
just
create your
say
own-
join hangout,
Right.
and it is not letting me.
Right. Even if they did.
Goodness. Or, and it would show up here, and it's not even showing up here. It's showing up for last month,
I was thinking after,
Oh, goodness.
maybe you want to just speak out one thing out there, so if you want to be ready for that.
Oh, I didn't know.
If nothing else, at the very beginning, just sort of think about us for updates. Because if just linking us with Tolkien societies around the world.
Right.
So we want to go on and on. H1 AR MAN DACIL. I think I missed the letter R. Yep. That should get you something. My brain remembers things, but it doesn't always remember what file it goes in. It's a, does it describe what the root of the word is? PR. South. I would type in. Did you type in south? Yeah, what should you?
No, see, it's creating a new one.
Right. So I think maybe just somebody doesn't have it listed that way. But if you try south and north and Elvish.
Why isn't it showing up?
There you go.
Oh, I was, right.
Yes.
I was thinking about something that isn't necessarily, it's more of a criticism. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
It has to do with the psychology, how they like what he wrote, but
It's on YouTube.
it's falling out of
It's
style
on
to
YouTube.
give value. So they're trying to
And that's why
separate the two.
Artemir
It's
could join us here. And YouTube.
got
What is
value.
Yeah.
Andrew?
That's why letter 89 is really interesting. Sweet. Good job. Yeah.
So I've sent invitations.
Are we?
Well, this laptop is on, but it doesn't do everybody else
Is this
any good.
audio picking anything up?
It picks you guys up somewhat, but not well. But no, that's not working at all
It's
right
not
now.
at all.
Here,
So,
posted an invitation.
You want to share, Drake? I'll just make note of it. You want to share what you found? Because you might as well. Drake's sharing the directions here, guys. He found them online. So,
Oh, nice.
so north.
Just speak very, very loudly.
Yeah, that's fine.
So north is Foreman, east is Rowan with a accent on the O, west is Newman with an accent on the U, and south is Yarmouth.
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 Okay, so that does follow then that if the Elvish word for left hand is Yarmite, that would seem connected to Yarman is south, and if the Elvish for right hand is Formite, Forman is north. And interesting, west is Newman, which would be Numenor, right? The men of the west. So, literally, your left hand, your right hand.
I
So
wonder if they.
you're facing west when you're looking at as an elf, like you said, Richard, the map making and the influence on Gondor as well.
Yes.
From the elves.
Which is actually pretty clever of Tolkien.
It is.
He does that a lot, Strider.
Dread.
I think
Oh,
it's
okay.
Another
I think
interesting thing.
Safari
about this
updated and
article-
lost the plugin
article
maybe.
pointed out, the 100-year anniversary of World War, start of World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, actually nice trendy little videos that show you how it works seamlessly.
phone too, and I can't find a connect that can view YouTube. It won't let me.
It's not like we're like,
We've done this many times. I don't know why all of a sudden
Well, probably
It's,
somebody's exploiting it.
just not working.
shoot to kill.
It's got to be
Very
nice.
nice.
Technical problems. It's not cool.
Use 3. 2, 1.
We're starting.
No, what's known as software is like Microsoft Word.
Oh, right. So we can.
Here,
So send it to you. So Norwegian names are first.
I just started taking French and studying reading anything out loud.
So Mercy, who's my freshman daughter, she's taking French 1 as well.
Yeah, to learn the alphabet, which is impressive.
Are they English?
goes to YouTube instead.
As hard as
Normally
it
there's
would have
a
been.
nice little
If my
invite.
great grandfather had chosen his actual last name instead of the name of his farm,
Part of this is.
as the Bjornsson.
I'm sorry about this, people. This is frustrating.
Child view.
I don't know how much of it is because of the bandwidth issues and how much is Google changed something again.
Splitting X.
We got a live broadcast.
You know what it says in the adventure blue book? I'm not going to bring this into that because I'm not going to comment that character. But specifically, the cultural reward cannot be lost.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the
Circle. Whoops.
If for some reason it is
Circles.
taken away from the character,
You have to get that.
or something of equal value.
Replacement of equal value.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, number one is like, how would you get back to the Martian? I mean, people want to go back there just to get sleeping bags.
Somebody really likes that.
And they campfires.
Yeah, there's this trail of
Did you ever read the
stone.
Anglo-Saxon poem that told about the
Layers.
the 6 warriors?
Especially that troll.
Have you not read this epic poem?
I have not read that.
You've not read that epic poem. It might get a little tiresome. And you use the Anglo-Saxon kind of
invites either.
forms. It's that Tolkien used it in like Beowulf and such. So it's like 4 beats.
Oh, they're no longer supporting Safari. Chrome only.
What about Firefox?
Where they put that in the fine print?
Nowhere. It's Chrome extension. Oh, it's Chrome extension. I don't want. What the?
Pretty soon we'll be drinking the
Firefox has never worked properly for me on Mac. For,
Comcast customer service told me a while back that they're
Google
having
don't
issues
use
with
crashing
Chrome.
for us.
Lingo.
I used to hate Internet Explorer.
I have to use all
But I think Google more now.
because I work for the city of Spokane and I have to test.
yeah, you have to have all
I
that.
have to test IE6 still, believe it or not, in my coding. Does it work for IE6?
That's because the discussion isn't really happening right now. We're trying to get the broadcast to work, Artemir. I'm sorry. So you're not actually missing anything.
Tell them what's
Just my
going on with
frustration.
yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get the actual other connections to work here.
My primary
So
browsing.
sorry, we're still trying though. We haven't given up yet.
I use Firefox whenever I can.
If there are certain.
Hey Artemir, maybe you
The
can tell us
only
this while we're
area
waiting.
where
Can you recall any other Elvish words that relate to the
the Elvish words for hand that we were just going over in Tengwar.
Anything you want to know faster on that.
So we were just discussing some of the different words there.
If it were
And we were relating to that. You heard that part about how left hand, Yarmite, right hand.
I thumb my nose in a general direction.
English, can I get some? Mother was a hamster.
Although I heavily
It is quite IKEA.
What about the younger berries?
furniture. Well, the
Ageism thing?
No, what you need.
they haven't been around.
Nice. I want to have like a vintage, like a wine or something. It's called Snurry's Choice or something. It'd be like you can have the elder Edda or the younger Edda.
What about Plenty of the Younger?
There you go. Yes.
choice. Snoopy's choice.
There you go. The Great Lakes and up in where Wisconsin actually meets the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
So for some reason, there's a Firefox on my dash.
Of the Upper Peninsula
So I'm hearing it's very cool.
was at one time New
That's
France.
so everybody could
It's part of what is
Well, the whole Midwest was Louisiana.
well, okay, that's true.
So
The French back in the 1600s already that part was claimed from New France and then changed names.
So I have a
France
Laura's-
sold off all their possessions.
Laura's cousin just opened up a distillery in Duluth. And
Could you boil this down for us, please?
Sage, sage gin.
Sage gin? Oh my goodness.
Wine.
That's really why it's bad.
It's actually
Pretty good. Really?
Yeah.
Now I've only had gin once and I didn't like it very well.
Artemir says, yeah, well, I'm like, hey, okay, I'm not really a cognac expert. Yeah, I know that words for several body parts are given in a Vineyard Tengwar issue. Yes, we've been reading, if you missed it, we at the beginning of every episode, the last few episodes, I've been reading from the Vineyard Tengwar. Number one, we've been going through the various body parts, slowly working our way down, and we're down to the hands right now. Oh boy.
But I still haven't found the Elvish word for the thumb yet.
Or a hitchhiker.
Or hitchhiker. So how does one translate the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in
Or thumberai.
yeah. in Quenya?
French is the word sandwich.
Maybe the high elves would be caught dead. Right, yeah.
Sage.
Sunset, goodness. It's trying to read all my keys.
Yes.
My email is Bob Blair.
Really? Oh, that's awesome. Drake. You won't talk to Dad, Drake. Your dad doesn't pull out the puppets, I hope.
I hope not.
Yes.
He hasn't yet, but remembers it.
Yeah.
I'm a sailor. I sail.
Have you resorted to that with your daughter?
Death therapy.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
No, it's a classic movie. Every time my wife has like corn on the cob.
Ads. Get ad
What's
block.
this?
We'll get that later. Alright, we're still broadcasting.
This is
It's not.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Sorry, my phone. This, yeah, it's my phone. It's with my phone. And then I tried to save money by downgrading. Verizon said, I will charge you for that. I'm trying to save it easy, so I'm going to do it.
The microphone is on.
Yes. Once again, they're choking out on bandwidth. We're sending the Rangers of Bethillion back now to resolve this issue.
Sauron is trying to upgrade Morgoth's firmware.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and go without that. We'll go with the
Okay.
external mic.
So Hawk, thank you for sharing the some of the Tengwar vocabulary. So there'll be a quiz next month. So the word for hand is me, not to be confused with me. Hollow of hand is kambe. Finger is lepse. Fist is ware. Hand is forbite. And no Elvish for thumb, apparently. So I'm pretty sure they had opposable thumbs, though. To eat their peanut butter sandwich. And just for the record, Drake found the reference to the cardinal directions on.
Oh,
And did you want to read those, or shall I? Okay, so for south, which is Hiarmen, indeed corresponds to left hand, Hiarmite. So south would be the root for Hiar. And then right, the north is Formen, so, and that's the right hand, Formete. So if you're facing to the west, in front of you is New. West, and the south, Yarmen. So Formen is north, Roman is east, Newman is west, and south is Yarmen. So we're going to move on to
In the literature, you can see this in the map of
here.
In the Hobbit, you can see
no,
this.
no, I unplugged it. You can just speak normally because we're not getting a lot of background noise. So
In the Hobbit, you can see that as the way the orientation of the map of the Lonely Mountain is actually the top of the map is the west.
Yes.
So it's kind of neat how Tolkien weave that in.
How he hadn't worked out some of the mythos or the mythology in The Hobbit yet, but he had that definitely already very, very clearly ingrained. So, Richard, do you want to carry on with maybe just commenting on the latest issue of Am and Hen, which is the magazine of the Tolkien Society, which we are a part. Are we not, Hawk?
We are. We are an official SMEAL of the United Kingdom Tolkien Society. You and I are both paying members as well of the UK Tolkien
We're an
Society.
enclave. We're going to overthrow the United States government.
It's a joke. It's a joke. None of that's true.
My universal translator was just off the chain just then.
Yeah, sure it was. Fourth grade teachers always have these.
Oh, goody.
Sorry.
No, just extra watches.
No,
Anybody need any more cards?
Google will be.
We are a peaceful,
Google will be.
peace-loving smear. The peaceful hobbit virtues. We're no threat to anyone.
Except when it comes to battling four other armies.
5, I mean, hobbits weren't included.
Yeah.
They're sitting at home, nice and safe. Sending happy thoughts from the bushes.
They outsourced.
You can whip me with the noodle later, Hawk, for that
All right.
indiscretion.
Do you want to go ahead and read the letters?
Behind the
Actually, Richard was going to comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Last month.
Yeah.
they didn't have a name.
About Bjorn's Hall.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
Nice. So discussion on
basically
mead
2
halls.
pages.
Good. That was neat.
That I heard it really.
mean.
Imperial Trojans.
Okay. So yeah, Hawk, if you're ready, we can.
Okay.
Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. To Christopher Tolkien. 7th to 8th of November, 1944. 20 Northmore Road. Care of your guardian angel makes me fear that he is being specially needed. I dare say it is so. It almost reminded me of a sudden vision, or perhaps itself into pictorial form in my mind. I had not long ago, when spending half an hour in St. Gregory's before the Blessed Sacrament, when the quadrant or capitalized was being held there. Was that ore?
I have no idea.
Quorant, sorry, not quadrant. Quarant apostrophe space ore. Quorant ore was being held there. I perceived a false mote, or millions of motes, to only one of which was my small mind directed. Glittering white because of the individual ray from the light which both held and lit it. Not that there were individual rays issuing from the light, but the mere existence of the mote and its position in relation to the light was in itself a line, and the line was light. And the ray was the guardian angel of the mote, not a thing interposed between God and the creature, but God personified in language, but a real finite person. Thinking of it since, for the whole thing was very immediate, and not recapturable in clumsy language, certainly not the great sense of joy that accompanied it, and the realization of another human person that I might think of with love. It has occurred to me that I speak diffidently and have no idea whether such a notion is legitimate. It is, at any rate, quite separate from the vision of the light and the poised mote. This is a finite parallel to the infinite. As the love of a father and son who are infinite and equal is a person, so the love and attention of the light to the mote is a person. That is both with us and in heaven, finite but divine, i.e. angelic. Anyway, dearest, I received comfort, part of which took this curious form, which I have, I fear, failed to convey, except that I have with me now a definite awareness of you. We might see the glimmer in the faces and persons as longest sentences in there.
English language.
That in between his
It begins. Ends with ellipses.
Yes. Just join it. It's
So first comment, interesting, he uses the symbol of a mote of dust in the light. And that reminded me, I don't know if you've ever read C.S. Lewis wrote something called Meditation in a Tool Shed. Anybody ever heard of that?
No.
No. So, since Lewis and Tolkien were friends, I don't think that they were borrowing from each other. It's interesting to me that outside and striking thing in the place. Everything else was almost pitch black. I was seeing the beam, not seeing things by it. Then I moved so that the beam in my eyes. Instantly, the whole previous picture vanished. I saw no tool shed, and above all, the tree outside, and beyond that, 90-odd million miles away, the sun. Looking along the beam and looking at the beam are very different. And then he basically goes on in the article to talk about how when you look at things, you look at it as you can look at it as a scientist, which is kind of like
Looking at it.
looking, at it. But then when you looking along things, you end up seeing actually another perspective. And so he was relating that to really very interesting kind of discussion about culture, about perspective, about relationships, and even including spirituality. So that was really interesting that Tolkien in this letter he's also kind of referring to enlighten this idea that that it's possible that there if there is a supreme being, in one way of thinking of that relationship is that there is human beings to emote, and yet what's interesting about that idea of a piece of dust is that it seems so small, and yet when it's lit up by the I've done this before. When I'm reading at home, suddenly you realize how much these dust motes are floating around in the air. But there is something beautiful about seeing the light shine on that. So I think that's kind of a cool picture. I mean, there are transcendent truths or realities, beautiful things beyond us. Like I talked about, in terms of his Roman Catholic faith, I do think that he, as he's thinking about life, I want to take him seriously because he's trying to get at something that's bigger than himself. Yeah,
This whole thing is about a guardian angel.
Yeah, I know. That's
And the word "specially"
is interesting because reading Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories to my boys, Kipling uses specially a lot when he
Yeah.
means more especially.
Yeah.
And Kipling, like Tolkien, spent lots of time in South Africa.
Right. Well, should we go on to the next paragraph?
Everybody jump off those points. How about we just go in order?
That is the
Or just
long
do a
one.
portion of it.
Yes. So
Maybe till about this was in 1927
this was
on
in
Sunday till this
1927,
is pass it on.
On Sunday, Priska and I cycled in wind and rain to St. Gregory's Parish, where was battling with a cold and other disability, and it did not do her much immediate good, though she's Friar C's best sermons and longest. A wonderful commentary on the Gospel of the Sunday of the woman and of Jairus' daughter, made intensely vivid by his comparison of the three evangelists. P. Was especially amused by his remark that St. Luke, being a doctor himself, did not all the worse for him, so he toned it a bit down. Also by his vivid illustrations for modern miracles. The similar case of the woman similar who was cured instantly at Lourdes, so that the tumor could not be found, and her belt was twice to the story of the little boy with tubercular peritonitis was not healed, who was nurses attending him. As the train moved away, it passed within sight of the grotto. The little boy sat up. I want to talk to that little girl. In the same train, there was a little girl who had been healed. As he got up and walked there and played with the little girl, then he came back. And they gave him cake and 2 bowls of chocolate and enormous potted meat sandwiches, and he ate them. This was in 1927.
Okay.
Miracles.
Any comment?
C.S. Lewis, of course, wrote his book.
He did. Yeah.
Miracles.
Actually, that's a very good one, especially for skeptical people. Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's interesting that those types of things were being said in
1927 or 1940s.
the middle of a war.
Yes. Well, we're all very, it's very easy to discount things until you're in the middle.
As many soldiers were coming back not
disabled.
not healed of their affliction.
27 was the interwar period.
Right, but the letter's being written during the war. He's referring to that. So. Okay, if nobody objects, I'll read the next part.
Okay.
So our Lord told them to give the little daughter of Jairus something to eat. So plain and matter of fact, for so miracles are. They are intrusions, as we say, erring into real or ordinary life, but they do intrude into real life, and so need ordinary meals and other results. Of course, Father C. could not resist adding, and there was also a Capuchin friar who was mortally ill and had eaten nothing for years, and he was cured, and he was so delighted about it that he rushed off and had 2 dinners, and that night he had not his old pains, but an attack of plain ordinary indigestion. But at the story of the little boy, which is a fully attested fact, of course, with its apparent sad ending and that sudden unhoped-for happy ending, I was deeply moved and had that peculiar emotion we all have, though not often. It is quite unlike any other sensation, and this is something I think is very important to listen into Tolkien here, because this is very much related to The Lord of the Rings. And all of a sudden, I realized what it was, the very thing that I have been trying to write about and explain. in that fairy story essay that I so much wish you had read, and that I think I shall send to you. You guys know what he's talking about there? It's an essay on fairy stories. For in it I coined the word eucatastrophe, the sudden happy turn in a story which pierces you with a joy that brings tears, which I argued it is the highest function of fairy stories to produce. And I was there led to the view that it produces its peculiar effect because it is a sudden glimpse of truth. Your whole nature chained in material cause and effect, the chain of death, feels a sudden relief as if a major limb out of joint had suddenly snapped back. It perceives, if the story has literally truth on the second plane, for which see the essay, that this is indeed how things really do work in the great world for which our nature is made. And I concluded by saying that the resurrection was the greatest eucatastrophe possible in the greatest fairy story, and produces the essential emotion, Christian joy, which produces tears because it is qualitatively so like sorrow, because it comes from those places where joy and sorrow are at one, reconciled, as selfishness and altruism are lost in love. Of course, I do not mean that the Gospels tell what is only a fairy story, but I do mean very strongly that they do tell a fairy story, the greatest. Man, the storyteller, would have to be redeemed in a manner consonant with his nature, by a moving story, moving emotionally. But since the author, if it is the supreme artist and the author of reality, this one was also made to be true on the primary plane, so that in the primary miracle, the resurrection, and the lesser Christian miracles too, though less, you have not only that sudden glimpse of the truth behind the apparent ananke of our world, but a glimpse that is actually a ray of light through the very chinks of the universe about us. I'll stop there. Do we have the cliff notes, or the footnotes for number 1 and 2 that we could read? Because I'm not sure what that first one is, and then we have a second one. We could read both of those.
One, also known as the 40 Hours Devotion, the Blessed Sacrament is exposed on a throne in a monstrance, and the faithful pray before it. It turns throughout 40 hours. This length of time was probably fixed on as the period during which Christ's body rested in the tomb. Greek, ananke is Greek. Necessity, constraint.
So how does that make sense here?
The apparent truth of the world.
Sensible things.
That is so helpful. I know. I'm really good at being helpful.
No, I mean, I think this is motivating Tolkien. He's talking here, we're getting past some of the details, and we're looking at maybe a glimpse of the writer himself. So maybe we can just, he's talking here, referring to an essay he wrote, which is pretty long, but it's very good for anybody who, I mean, if you have time to read it.
Isn't he so that you have an expected course of action, which is sort of unexpected happen, and everything is safe.
Between that and kind of the Deus et Machina kind of element where you have like a play where suddenly appears and rescues the character. And I think that seems to be a little bit more like, well, of course it's going to happen, right?
Well, that's the origin from the Greek plays where God will come down on the mechanism and make everything right.
Right.
But
that's not what Tolkien means here, is
well,
it?
no. From Tolkien's perspective, those are false deities.
Right. But also, almost that for joy to come out, you have to honestly expect it to come down into darkness. You have to believe that it's really hopeless before this unequivocal. I mean, isn't that kind of one of the times in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit where I think it actually quotes at the end of the Lord of the Rings where Pippin, right before the gates are coming, and then he bursts into tears because he realizes that they're going to win, even though it seems like so unlikely.
The ego representatives of the deity.
Well, right.
Man, we.
Well, right.
It was kind of his equivalent to writing in direct intervention.
Yeah. America or in the West. I think eucatastrophe is harder to achieve now because people
Expect it.
they expect it. Yeah.
That's why you have to care.
Well, that's interesting to me because it means I don't know without it seeming trite. You know what I mean? I'm not disturbed with the movies or the stories. I'm disturbed with our human nature because I feel like myself here. What do you think, guys?
In the U.S., the story of the U.S. On one hand, the time where the poor in this country are rich beyond most countries' wildest dreams.
Right. Better.
And if that is, and so there's no room, if you will, for hopelessness to exist.
Well,
in everyday life.
Hopelessness as opposed to pessimism or just discouragement.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You're saying complete and utter hopelessness.
And this is something that
we don't face very often.
Not very many of us face very often.
Like where you don't know where the next food is going to come from.
And it wasn't apparent, in World War II was probably the last time the U.S. felt utterly hopeless. I mean, even in 9/11,
right,
it wasn't hopelessness.
I want to get some different perspectives here. Thank you, Chris. I think that was a good point. And maybe perspective as a Christian is one way of obviously looking at it one way. I feel a deep sense of resonance here and connection with what he's saying because he's referring to the resurrection. How does it a perspective? Do you see kind of broader either from other points of view or in our culture? Or, I mean, one of the big was Nordic mythology. Fairy stories in a broad a lot to him because they represented like the underpinnings of people's hopes and dreams, and so they spun these tales. And he felt like England didn't have its own unique mythology. Is part of our problem that we don't have that we love to consume stories, but do Americans really like making stories? Which is related to role playing, actually. What? Come on, guys, let's get some debate going on this.
Sure.
First creating stories, I think
I certainly enjoy
there is the same people,
many different.
and it will come out differently
Right.
every
So,
time.
so what about our culture in general? I mean, because
But
my point.
more replaced with computer-based, there's far less of that. Now it's much more spoon-feeding rather than the creative process.
Minecraft.
This is the main character. Eden.
But the thing is, even before that, I would say my point is, yes, it's shifting even more now, maybe with digital. I don't know where that's all going. But even before that, let's take it back to 1980. Okay, PC in their home. Most. I've said most. Obviously, some of us are exceptions. So before it all became mainstream,
Guilty as charged.
wouldn't you say that Americans going back 30 years,
Wasn't until
we
1985.
consume stories,
personal computer,
but
rather than an idea.
we don't necessarily invest as much. I don't know that we have so much love for creating. I don't know. I think that there's something at this which I think robs us of the ability to experience what Tolkien is talking about. When was the last time, and I know we're all men here, but when's the last time you were reading a story or just the same thing where you're thinking, oh crap, it's all going down and this is all going to end badly.
Every
And then
time I
there's
watch
this-
the news,
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. This is my whole point, is that when was the last time that then some unlooked for change of affairs was so tears? Because he's getting at something that is very, very foundational to being human. I guess this is where movies that are really well made can get emotionally, they can get
After that, though.
yeah.
one of the things that is going through my head is the roots, is thinking about the roots of culture, as the worldwide culture looks at mythology as an interesting story of a different place in a different
Supposed
time
to, I believe.
and a different methodology. Whereas in ancient times, mythology was an explanation of why the world is the way it is. That's looking at it. We're using a completely different lens.
Tolkien would say he would agree with that, but you would also say that's why the fairy stories, but that you can have a secondary plane where you know it's not true, and then a primary where you know it's true, and the connection between the two. But a side note here, and then I want to see what you have to say. Side note, that in the next generation, or I shouldn't say the next, the current youngest generation growing up, whether that's called the millennials or whatever label they want to throw at it,
Whatever will stick.
Why do you
so here's the thing. My daughter loves humor and endless YouTube. It's like there's so many funny things out there, and even serious movies. She loves watching How It Should Have Been. For like lots of movies.
That's great.
How the Lord of the Rings should.
More than ever before, we have funny like mock spoofs of things. We all love that, right? And it just seems like it's exploding and exponentially. There's so much more. and it's kind of funny because we can make fun of ourselves. But it seems like there is a lack of an ability to take things seriously. Is that my imagination?
Well, then there's
Is that
other
true?
people who take things too seriously too, though.
It's
Guilty
about-
as charged.
I'm talking about
They're so easy.
I'm not saying being offended by parody. What I'm referring to, what I'm talking about is the ability to enjoy a serious theme in a movie rather than just laughing at everything. And I mean, I like having a sense of humor too. I'm just wondering if maybe we swung too far.
I'd say that my personal generation, while I think I enjoy serious movies more than most,
Okay, so that's just my perception.
but for the most part, I think the attention span to take a movie seriously is strong explanation.
So the ability to take things seriously is just as strong as it was before, but maybe the attention span is the issue.
That
What?
the U.S.'s IQ
you
went down
don't
for
watch-
the first time.
You don't want to
since
watch something like
10
Lawrence of Arabia?
I do like to see that. I
Yeah.
just know that
Your
everyone else
generation
knows
would
that's-
not have the patience to watch through Lawrence of Arabia, for example.
I like sitting through him.
Although his older brother does. He's
Because
2 years older. He
if-
loves it.
Because if Bush Sr. and Obama had watched Lawrence of Arabia, they wouldn't have gone into the Middle East in the
There's
first
another
place.
one. I was dead wrong there. Thank you, Drake, for pointing that out. But I think that maybe what it is, it has to do with the fact that it's not really about a lack of interest in things that are serious, but it might be
But
bites.
I think it's the instant gratification
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, this is the problem, or taking things seriously.
Well, it's also the tendency of the news media to try and can be exploited out of context.
The funny thing is, a lot of things we're saying right now, Tolkien and his cohorts at the time period were saying the exact same thing related to radio.
It's in our time.
Yeah, now we're the old timers except for him, but
I
these young whippersnappers, they just not like.
Yeah, I got a major. I called the IT director on the phone and said, "Here's the entire context. Read the entire message." He shut up.
Yeah,
On that
it's
note-
skimming too much, yeah.
Let's go on to the next paragraph.
Okay.
Drake, you want to read it, or?
You hand me the surface, please.
Okay.
Did you have a comment to add? I don't know if you got your.
I was laughing at the concept of just so stories again.
Oh yes.
Of how, I have an 8-year-old boy who knows an elephant didn't get his trunk by a
Right.
crocodile pulling on it.
Right.
But we enjoy listening to that perspective.
Isn't evolution kind of positing that the elephant got his trunk by something pulling on it? Because they're saying that the elephant got its trunk by breeding another elephant that had a slightly longer trunk that successfully breeded than the previous.
That's why I would
elephant.
say that evolution is the new mythology.
Well, and at the end of the story,
That's right.
each elephant went off one by one to get their trunks lengthened by the crocodile.
All right, let's move on to the next
It's also
paragraph.
directly contradicted by fossil
Okay,
species.
so who's next? Okay, Drake, I'll read it. Give him the paper copy.
You want to mark off where to start and
Just
where to
that
end?
entire paragraph.
It's the bicycle quote. I was riding along on a bicycle one day.
Okay.
You marked it.
I was riding along on a bicycle one day, not so long ago, past Redcliffe and Footmer, and I had one of those sudden clarities which sometimes come in dreams, even anesthetic produced ones. I remember saying aloud with absolute conviction, of course that's how things really do work. But I could not reproduce any argument that had led to this. Though the sensation was the same as having been convinced by reason, if without reasoning. And I have since thought that one of the reasons why one can't recapture the wonderful argument, or secret when one wakes up. It's simply because there was not one, but there was often, maybe, a direct appreciation by the mind, uh, but without the chain of argument we know in our time serial life. However, that's as may be. To send to lesser things, I knew I had written the story of Worth in The Hobbit when reading it. Half was old enough to be detached from me. I had suddenly, in a fairly strong measure, the catastrophic emotion at Bilbo's exclamation, "Eagles!" When you receive it, it'll soon be out of the way. That Frodo's face goes livid and commits to Sam that he's dead, just when Sam gives up.
If you like to.
And while we were still, as it were, on the porch of St. Gregory's on Sunday the 5th of November, I saw the most touching sight there. Leaning against the wall as we came out of church was an old tramp in rags, something like sandals tied on his feet and string, an old tin can on one wrist, and in his other hand a rough staff. He had a brown beard and a curiously clean face, with blue eyes, and he was gazing into the distance in some thought, not heeding any of the people, not begging. I could not resist the impulse of offering him a small alms, and he took it with great kindliness, and thanked me courteously, and then went back to his contemplation. Just for once, I rather took Father's seat back by saying to him that I thought the old man looked a great deal more like Saint Joseph than the statue in the church. At any rate, Saint Joseph on the way to Egypt, he seems to be, and what a happy thought in these shabby days, where poverty seems only to bring sin and misery, a holy tramp. I could have sworn it away, but he says Betty told her that he had been at the early mass and had been to communion, and his devotion was plain to see, so plain that many were edified. I do not know just why, but I find that immensely afternoon up about once a year.
You want to take the next one?
I guess. Where from where? Where to where?
Bottoms, if you don't.
Bottom of the next page.
Coming.
Yes.
Oh, I guess I could finish the whole letter.
Yes.
This is becoming a very peculiar letter. Peculiar letter. I hope it does not meet topics. Matt,
That. Should be that.
that are not really treatable without erations and rewritings, so in air letters. Let us finish the diary. On Monday, I think I hadn't one of the Baton movements. Certainly it was buried that day. I also saw CSL and CW from about 10:40 to 12:50, but I can recollect little of the Feast of Reason and Flow of Soul, partly because we all agreed so.
Is Lewis and Charles Williams.
It was a bright morning, and the mulberry tree in the grove just outside of CSL's window shone like a fallow gold against cobalt blue sky. But the weather worsened again in the afternoon. Did one of the foulest jobs. I grease-banded all the 16 filthy little plantlets on. It took 2 hours, nearly as long to get the damn stuff off the hands and implements. I neglected it last year and so lost thee a glorious crop tomorrow. It will be like this catastrophe?
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic fallen world if next year there ain't no blossoms. Tuesday, lectures and a brief glimpse at the Bird of Lewis Brothers and Williams. The Bird is now gloriously empty, with improved beer and the landlord wreathed in welcoming smiles. He lights a special fire for us.
This is the Bird right here.
The Eagle and Child.
Eagle and Child Pub, Oxford.
It was called the Bird and Baby or
The
whatever.
Bird and Baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that was a nickname.
Yep.
The purpose of your reminder about Lord Nelson was in the preliminary meeting to form a United Christian Council he's always about. I forgot to tell you that Gilglin's Hamlet, he seized on a very quiet moment to yell from the dress circle. A very fine performance, and I'm enjoying it very much. He cut but the swear words. He did the same at the Playhouse. He was nearly lynched in the new theater, but he goes on his odd way. Your own father.
He's mentioned this guy before. I'd love to see this guy. He's in the middle of things, just blurts out sayings.
Well, I'm sure we can find someone in Spokane who's like that.
All right, any other business?
It's the 100-year anniversary of World War One.
Yes, August.
Which means we must reenact it.
I don't think that's gonna work.
You can remodel your house.
It's kind of it's about World War II, as opposed to World War. Or World War
Carried
II.
on from them.
The League of Nations was a shell.
Although Germany did finish paying the reparation. A few years ago from the side.
Yeah,
They're still
And
That was part of the national debt still.
it is.
Oh, good grief.
great.
Yeah, well, the
The
Marshall Plan is to try to
U.S.
rebuild Europe.
continues to imperialize on the wars. Not when it's
No incendiary comments, please.
not when it's a fact.
Well, actually, the beginning of World War I, we still thought of ourselves like that, though. I mean,
So this is November, and do we think in November was November
you're talking about the letter.
Sorry, my bad.
that there was no hope of winning still, or was
Oh.
there a glimmer? Or
Interesting. The camera a second there. I don't think anybody can see.
November of 1944 about the war, and was that influencing a letter there?
When was Operation?
That would have been in June. He referred to. Are you talking about the D-Day?
Yeah.
I think by November.
About hope.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Actually, I think that's not reaching. That in his own time, he was kind of looking for that new catastrophe, and that people thought the World War II would not last that long, and then it got worse and worse, and then you start to think, will anybody stop this madman? And what's it going to look like? Especially if you lived in England, where you're getting bombed all the time, more than the United States can understand. I mean, Pearl Harbor got bombed. Everybody was indignant and angry,
But
but it's different from the mainland, right? Like
Well, New York.
much later on.
Us West Coasters
Well, no,
have
but I mean,
no
it's
idea.
kind of a.
It's similar,
And agreed, we just don't really understand
But-
the indignity that they
well,
felt.
sure.
In some ways, I get the impression that I'm overstating their significance a little bit, I think.
That's a different situation. I mean, I suppose everybody is shocked, and psychologically speaking, I think it was a huge blow to our country. But I think it's even worse when you feel like your whole country is in danger of being invaded. I mean, that's much worse.
It's true that they, in London in World War II, they weren't sure if Hitler was going to come across the channel or not. From the benefit of history, we know that he just didn't have the resources, but they felt what was an imminent threat of a booted heel on their necks.
So I just found out that the Allied forces reached the.
Okay. So it was turning.
It was.
So they freed France, I guess.
And Italy.
Battle of the Bulge was in December, though.
Yes.
The German counteroffensive.
Hmm.
Ooh, deadly dead air.
There.
I'm still pretty.
It's old as far as silence on the broadcast is that.
Let's make a final link with the Eucatastrophe theme from this letter.
Yeah.
And that not just the Eagles, but the context, which is the Battle of Five Armies. Just taking the story.
Sadly.
Yes, sadly.
They don't wish for him to do so.
Right, and I think he'll probably do a better job on the third one than he did in the
This is a
second.
major battle.
Exactly. He's probably going to be pretty good at looking at a map, or even the old map that Tolkien himself drew in the frontispiece of The Hobbit. You think, oh yes, it's a mountain, but we're talking
A mountain.
a mountain.
Having
Well, even just like Mount Spokane. Imagine that being a good chunk of that hollowed out.
Yeah.
You know, and levels and everything. You have a small city in there.
Don't you like that little
It
comparison?
takes, it takes a long time to get up that mountain in a car,
Exactly.
let alone on foot.
And then you think about
that,
hosts and armies in between the flanks of the mountain, and the orcs are driving around Spirit Lake, and they're coming this way.
Yeah.
The orcs have invaded Spokane?
I'm thinking
Here we go,
of
do
the
a
mountain.
reenactment of the
Have-
Battle of
have-
Five Armies around
Yeah.
Mount Spokane Park.
Having grown up on the west side of the state, Mount
Oh,
Rainier.
yeah. Oh, yeah, right here, yeah.
sitting there, right there,
Well,
always threatening.
Erebor wasn't Snow Peak, though, was it?
I think you can make an argument that it was.
Was it?
I think
I'm
comment in
looking
the
at the
Hobbit.
map.
Mountain, I don't
I think
remember.
it said that.
Not at the time.
No, because he had just been out.
Uh-huh.
I think it says that. But I think because of the dragon, it probably wasn't.
Right.
Look at the image.
Industrial.
In the annotated Hobbit.
No, not the annotated.
Don't annotate the Hobbit.
Don't
He's just a little
annotate
fellow.
the Hobbit.
I feel like that would be rather uncomfortable.
I can just see a small guy with post-it notes.
Well, you know.
He's just
Yeah.
outlined and post-it notes.
No, he's got a footnote.
He's like an autopsy. He's laid out on a table with post-it notes surrounding him.
I think we're getting close to
Post-its
the
on
end.
his feet never fall off. Oh, yeah.
So, we have any?
Perhaps here there might be some snow.
So the caption on the left says, as with the Misty Mountains, Tolkien's Lonely Mountain is alpine in shape and form. It was taken by E. Eliot Stock and published in his Scrambles in Storm and Sunshine, 1910. In his walking tour of Switzerland in the summer of 1911, Tolkien and his companions, did you know he did the walking tour of Switzerland in the summer of 1911?
I've heard of it, but I don't-
Tolkien and his companions would have had some spectacular views of the Matterhorn as they approached it from the northeast and passed it by the north. The front gate, which is the illustration, the standard black and white illustrations that appeared in The Hobbit since 1937. This drawing appears in artist number 130 in pictures, number 16 left. A version of this illustration by H.E. Riddet first appeared in the Light. The gnarled and anthropomorphic tree in the foreground is a close copy of the ink sketch Tolkien made in July 1928.
Do you have the Hobbit 75th anniversary here?
No, I never bought that. I don't buy every
So
version.
perhaps.
But the outside, you know how it's got the dragon and the dust jacket.
With John D. Ratliff's version, it had all of that.
Because that
I didn't bring that.
because Tolkien's original illustration.
Yeah,
I think it did.
it's true. All right, we should probably
Eng-
wrap it up.
but
I don't know if anybody's even made it. We lost so many people.
We lost Jeremiah too.
The English mountains, the mountains in the UK, are there any that are snow capped year round?
Yes.
Take 2 or small. What do you want?
Have teachers.
Take 2 in the morning.
But that picture comparison of were you able to show that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Sorry.
So that yeah, it was interesting to see that, like you were mentioning similarities, and I was just noting those, because it is it's really the last.
More chapters in the ring.
Yay!
And then 92 is pretty short.
Could we do 93 as well?
I didn't go farther than that.
Okay, let me just double check here. Here we go. 92 is short. Is also short. We could do 90 through 93. Although 94 is in December of 44 and 95 is in January of 45, would that be a natural breaking point, or should we look at themes?
Themes, I think we're going to.
Okay, 94 is about Kirith Ungol,
Yes.
and 93 is about Sam and Frodo again.
Yes.
So what about 95? It's nothing about that. And then 96 is quite long. We could go up to 95, I suppose, since that.
All right, well, we'll go in that range.
We'll go as far as we.
Okay,
Time
96 is the
permits.
next big one. But it looks like he is going to be writing about his, talking about where he's at in the story.
At some point, we should spend some time on these coming up. We haven't really spent a lot of time on Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun.
Yep.
Tolkien's Fall of Arthur.
Do that
A little bit. Beowulf. Adventure Skinnies. shame is why there even is the popularity of Beowulf because of Tolkien.
Yes.
Right.
So
Maybe that'd be good to kind of a kick off the. Kick off kind of pick something like Sigurd and Gudrun, or
it's been turning off the video throughout most of this. It keeps saying your connection. So Google has been over through my servers. So I had full control. It's more headache, it's more hassle for me.
but this is a headache and
But
hassle.
this has become unusable the last two sessions. The sessions had completely problem. Plus, will not let me join with my cell phone, and
So
because
they're obviously
backup.
Yeah, they're obviously curtailing some ways of using. Anyway,
Yeah.
So let's just
we
formally
apologize
sign
for
off
the
instead.
technical issues, but we hope you were able to make it to the parts where it worked. I'll have to go back and edit out all that struggle, so at least there's a video of the content we did discuss.
Yeah.
TolkienScholars.org. It's the Tolkien Society. We meet every second Saturday of the month from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. And we look forward to your comments and suggestions and interactions in future discussions. We hope to see you all well. Namaste.